Join us in our continuation of the lore in No Man's Sky as we resume with the story behind the Gek and the Vy'keen in this next installment of Game Lore. We began this series with the intention of learning about the lore in No Man's Sky and sharing it with all of you. But with recent events such as an on-staff story writer being hired at Hello Games, just like our own universe and our own lives, the lore in No Man's Sky, it's not over yet. And our journey into uncovering the lore in No Man's Sky has led us to yet another contributor to this lore, who may have contributed more than we know, William Porter. I'm almost positive that this series, Game Lore, will be returning to No Man's Sky sometime in the near future.
The Gek are an amphibious species and are native to the water-rich system of Balaran, close to the center of the universe. Balaran was the original home planet of the Gek race and is referred to in various entries in Gek lore found on plaques on planets explored and colonized by the Gek. Balaran was a water-rich world, providing the amphibious Gek with many places to spawn and breed their porwriggles in holy larval pools. These pools were filled with what became known as spawning syrup. They are now a mercantile race. Their ancestors once believed themselves to be the first and master race in the galaxies until they had slaughtered every entity in their way to build the empire. They were ultimately beaten into submission by the Aerons when the core junta of the Gek first spawn were killed, as the low spawn Gek turned on the first spawn. The Gek are a small-statured race with bird-like eye placements and beaks pointing back to their amphibious ancestry. They are bipedal with claw-like fingers and have a variety of different head accessories. The Gek were once an arrogant and bloodthirsty primal race known as the Gek the First Spawn. They were obsessed with many rituals designed to conquer the universe and harness its resources for themselves. This Gek dominion swooped through the universe and invaded everywhere at ease and nearly eliminated the entire population of Korvax Prime, causing the Great Disconnection. During this time, the first spawn of the Gek were enslaving a majority of the young Korvax in an act of mercy after winning a war with the weakened Vy'keen who had just beaten the Aerons. Fresh Korvax were put into horrific conditions of slavery, abused and neglected. When more of the Korvax died, bodies were refused a return to the remaining Korvax colony planets. Instead, Gek the First Spawn stripped their bodies down and melted them into more equipment for their war efforts. But in present day, typical Gek are commonly corporate and plutocratic in their mannerisms, with many of their titles tied to trading and industrial related terms. Gek commonly communicate through verbal and olfactory means, meaning that one should also watch for particular aromas when in conversation with them. Many Gek utilize certain dietary additives known collectively as Gek nip in order to add specific fragrances to their emissions to elicit certain emotional responses in others.
Although we have touched on parts of the lore of the Gek and Vy'keen already, let's dive a bit deeper and look at the monoliths and plaques, and let's hear their side of the story.
We are the masters of the galaxy, the overlords of the cosmos. Each foe will submit with bended knee to the almighty Gek dominion. We are the first spawn, look upon our works and despair. Those born of the Gek who opposed the dominion were hurled from the spawning pools of the first spawn. Their cherished spawning syrup was replaced with flame. Their kind are now merely beasts of the field. After the opposers were cast out of the spawning pools, the sentinels descended. Their cause was unjust. Aggressors guided to the fray by the sent emissions of a war too great and too mighty for the automations to resist. The first spawn would remember this. The minor Gek were purged. It is only through fire that imperfection be destroyed and the path to domination is revealed. The first spawn feasted on the flesh of the discarded and grew strong. They bred and plotted while the sentinels patrolled the skies of Balaran for a multitude of cycles, but the automation's victories were but illusions. Beneath watchful metallic eyes, Gek legions rose. The holy larval pools of Balaran sprang forth with the purest of porwiggles. Generation begat generation, wholesome and strong, iron of fist, and with a granite resolve, we, the wise, first spawn, held back our tide of blood. We waited to attack. The unseen blow strikes the hardest. The dawn of the Empire, the first spawn, was birthed in the shadow of the folly of the great Vy'keen Sentinel War. The rock and the wave collided as they kept their vigil, awaiting signs of weakness to pave their coming. But before war had started, there was a mighty warrior, a leader to the Vy'keen, one that was honored and adored among its kind, Herc the Great. Or Herc, as he is often known, plays the dual role of warrior, creator, god for the Vy'keen. Before the coming of Herc, the Vy'keen feared the Sentinels. Like all races, our people cowered from their unquestioning violence, shrank from their tyrant rule, but the coming of Herc heralded a new dawn. Through their leader, the Vy'keen became strong. Now their courage knows no bounds. Herc looked to the skies and witnessed the destruction of the Sentinels. Worlds withered and died beneath their relentless gaze. The anger of Herc was unleashed. For a multitude of cycles, the yoke of the Sentinels had strangled the civilizations of the galaxy and their mewling cribs. Herc was displeased with the world of the Vy'keen as the automatons descended. Herc gazed upon a planet ravaged by weakness, progress, prosperity, and war. These are the things forbidden by the automatons, but the Vy'keen were the first to break the shackles, casting the old ways into the pit to herald the birth of a new age. The Vy'keen were the dam that overflowed. Righteous is the flood. And so it came to pass that on the eve of the 18th moon of Drungala, Herc cast the shackles of the Sentinel oppressors into the pit. The Vy'keen were the glorious first, the rising water that broke the dam. Although the Vy'keen had freed themselves from being oppressed by the Sentinels, Herc decided to go to the Great Monolith for answers. And it came to pass that the Great Monolith awoke. It heralded the challenge of Herc. 5 times Herc called upon it and was met with silence, but on the 6th cry, it awoke. The Great Monolith spoke with Herc of the travelers. Their coming should not be met with fire. Their coming was but one dream in an infinite universe. Their reach would be that of the endless. And when Herc asked of the Sentinels, the Great Monolith said nothing. Herc was troubled by its silence. But when Herc returned to the Vy'keen, after speaking with the monolith, Gra, they cheered, on top of the mountain of Dunskareen. Herc then addressed the crowd. The Great Monolith has answered me. It has awoken. It has told me of the coming of the travelers. They will be spared. The Vy'keen shall honor this decree. The crowd cried for Herc to reveal the Great Monolith's judgment on the Sentinel threat. The monolith stood silent, Herc told the Vy'keen. But the people were not satisfied. They muttered amongst themselves, and those blessed with tendrils did extend them. Then with a raised voice, Herc decreed, the oppressors will be eradicated. Gather your arms, for the time of reckoning is upon the enemy. The Vy'keen adorned their leader. As Herc stood upon the sacred mountain, now climbed to its peak, and with his fists outstretched, challenged Herc. Fool, now cried, the Sentinels cannot be vanquished. Herc with furious rage struck now from the mountain, and for 3 moons and 3 suns now fell before claimed by doom. Herc's rage against the upstart with Now inflamed the hearts of Now's followers, who upon their leader's demise felt the blood of the ancestors rise within them. The Vy'keen nations were bathed in righteous war, a civil war, for 60 moons. And on the 66th moon, the war cry of the Vy'keen of Now was silenced. After surveying their bodies, Herc gazed onto the heavens, and there beheld a great sentinel host descending upon the Vy'keen. The Vy'keen Sentinel War was now at hand. The Vy'keen foolishly fought a war with no end. Again and again they threw their warriors against the iron tide. The Sentinels signed Vy'keen flesh with laser. The Vy'keen scorched their foe with righteous fire. From the shadows the first spawn watched and prepared to unleash their reckoning. Gra, the Vy'keen screamed, the Sentinels are the enemy of progress and civilization. They are not of natural order. Their interference is an affront to the victorious Vy'keen crusade, which seeks to balance in all things through blood, ashes, and iron. This affront to the Vy'keen and their creed cannot go unpunished. The Vy'keen and Sentinels clashed, spilling blood and white metal through the void, each blow weakening their defenses against the fate that awaited them in the shadows. It would not be long before the first spawn took their rightful place as Emperors of the Stars. But the death of Herc came during the Endless War. Herc's body was ravaged by old age, becoming ancient and useless. Bellowing, Herc tore this body in two before the great monolith, as is the Vy'keen way. The echo of his dying roar can still be heard throughout the outer edge. Herc lives in us, the most venerated of the ancients. And countless cycles sifted through claws of time. Attrition was great. The battle against the Sentinels raged endlessly, but through righteous fire, the Vy'keen endured and the Sentinels burned. The oppressors were pushed back into the dark of space. The Vy'keen saw borders stretch between the stars. Onwards, they delved with legions at their back, scorching Sentinel metal with their fiery chariots and attack ships. The Vy'keen gazed upon their conquest and saw that they were righteous and good. The Vy'keen rose in glorious victory, yet noble warriors grew tired and weak. The onslaught against the machines endured for 99 times 90 cycles. There was attrition and incalculable death, but victory eluded them still. The endless replication of the Sentinels slowed, but could not be vanquished. But in time, the Sentinel hordes were pushed back. The oppressors fled into the sanctuary of the cosmos, and the spirit of Herc surveyed the battlefield and saw that the Vy'keen victory was glorious and just. The automatons became silent as the nation of Herc feasted upon Gra Gra. The songs of the victorious echoed into the edges of the galaxy. Although the Sentinels were pushed back, they congregated in the dark places of the void. There, they watched in the in-between nothingness, the blackness of space. They waited beyond the limits of the outer edge as millennia would pass and they would replenish, growing a force to return their order for countless ages. The Vy'keen spilled their own putrid blood and pushed the Sentinel machines back from the outer edge. They drove forward like crashing tides, leaving broken metal in their wake. For a time, the Sentinels became silent. In this silence came the glorious Gek ascent, and it came with the destruction of Korvax Prime. Korvax Prime was a vast and precious landscape of mineral ore and power. By right of universal rule, the first spawn claimed dominion over the planet. The Vy'keen licked each other's wounds during the silence of the Sentinels, while the dishonorable Gek first spawn chose to destroy Korvax Prime. The Vy'keen condemned this crime, but lacked the strength to fight. The Gek Empire flourished. It spread its empire into the depths of the cosmos. The Vy'keen victory in pushing the Sentinels back from the outer edge gave rise to the dominion of another. And no world, moon, or race could have opposed the Gek onslaught, yet the feeble Korvax refused to accept their conquest. They denied progress. This was their greatest folly. Driven by the desire for planetary equilibrium, the Korvax refused to delve deep inside their planet and profit from the jewel granted by fate. Their end was brought about swift by the first spawn strike. The destruction of Korvax Prime was vast, sudden, and mighty. In a tide of steel, the first spawn struck, scattering the planet through the cosmos as a warning to the unyielding. The absent Sentinels could not punish the rightful ascendancy of the Gek. And then the first spawn feasted on the debris of the Korvax Prime, gorging on a banquet of fragments plucked from the void, consumed to fuel the great ascendancy. The universe shook as the Gek grew rich. The Korvax found only despair. The Dominion became whole. A fear of the first spawn spread throughout the entire outer edge. Planets shook, systems recoiled, weak alliances formed, and were crushed. They shall fear the Gek forevermore. The entities of the Korvax were not destroyed. The first spawn are benevolent. The first spawn are merciful. Slavery saved the worthless. They toiled for their conquerors. Their reprieve was found in servitude. The Korvax knowledge became theirs. The Korvax technology became theirs. And even the Korvax became theirs. They serve as an example of our boundless power and mercy. The Korvax did not dare fight. The respect for the Sentinels is the Korvax weakness. And weakness is the path to defeat. The Korvax festered in electronic chains, and the Gek looked down upon them from their thrones. The Gek first spawn stand on the mighty brink of an eternal empire. It's endless in time. It is endless in space. Their dominion will know no bounds. Their armies will know no equal. Every Korvax electronic rebellion will be put down. Their appeals to their false and non-existent Atlas are mere superstition, found through despair. They are in vain, they are conquered. The breaking of the uprising shall know no mercy. Endless shall be their suffering. The galaxy is vast, but is knowable, and it can be conquered. It shall be subjected. But the brutality of the Gek first spawn called back the automatons that were hiding in the darkness. Their forces had grown, their technologies had developed. The foolish Gek beckoned the monster back into the places where our nations might have dwelt in strange harmony. True Sentinel domination of the Outer Edge began. Within a single lifetime, the Sentinels had returned, and this time they came to dwell on every world we knew, every world we went on to discover. The dominion of the Gek first spawn crumbled. They fell apart through idiocy and through the unchanging will of the beings they enslaved but could never understand. Their power is now but a memory, their crimes forgotten by so many. But then the Gek changed and they became peaceful. Their spawning pools bred in the name of commerce. But although the Vy'keen accept this peace, they do not forget, as other beings of the galaxy are so keen to do. Dishonor is unchanging. Crimes marked in blood do not fade. The Vy'keen do not forget.
Although there is a peace at the moment in No Man's Sky as we travel through it, if we're not talking about the pirates, but there is a hint of some Gek first spawn sympathizers and an undertone of Vy'keen vengeance towards the Gek, but the story is far from over. We all still explore the stars and wait for that mighty pen to continue the story in No Man's Sky. Join us in our next installment of Game Lore as we talk a little bit about the lore in No Man's Sky and we reflect on what we've learned and podcast style. I have been your host, Cobra, and I will see you all in the next Game Lore. Until next time.